Our US Open coverage is sponsored by AG1. AG1 is the daily foundational nutrition supplement that supports whole body health.
And as part of our US Open coverage, Joel and I are taking a little AG1 challenge of our own, and we'll be updating you on our AG1 journey and how it's improving our health and wellness. So Joel, we've got started. How are you finding it?
I'm not going to lie, I was a little bit nervous, I was a little bit skeptical at first, but I got my flask, put one scoop in, added water, shook it all about, and do you know what? It actually tastes pretty good.
Yeah, I was surprised because normally the healthier something is, the worse it tastes. But for me, what I like is I've got a cupboard of vitamins that it's been able to replace. So that's just one product I can take in the morning.
If a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 Travel Packs with your first purchase.
Go to drinkag1.com/tennisweekly. That's drinkag1.com/tennisweekly. Check it out.
Please take your seats quickly, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Tennis Weekly with Joel, Kim and Chris. On today's US Open preview, sponsored by AG1.
Alcaraz faces a potential Sinner rematch.
Goff lands in Swiatek's quarter.
And Tsitsipas draws a round one nightmare in Milos Raonic.
Kim, Chris, today is the 24th of August and we are here to catch up on the US Open draws at Tennis Weekly HQ. The final Grand Slam of the season is here, and after back-to-back Masters in Canada and Cincinnati to get us in the mood, it is now time for the main event in Flushing Meadow. How hyped are we about this?
I'm super excited because it does almost feel like the summer's just gone by in a blur since Wimbledon, but we're back together. Final Grand Slam of the year. I've downloaded my TV subscription now so I can watch it every second of it, almost every second. And I'm raring to go. I don't know about you guys.
I'm pretty excited. I think the back-to-back Masters, I mean, it's a lot to contend with. I think I needed maybe one more week to fully get myself back in it, but it felt like predictions came too soon for this, but they always come too soon. So why not embrace it and let's go?
I know it's going to be an interesting one. Yeah, it's almost like snuck up on me a little bit, and I'm almost still out of breath, I think, from the back-to-back Masters that we've just had. But we're going to be doing our US Open preview. We're going to be looking at the men's draws and the women's draws quarter by quarter. We're going to be doing and unveiling our collector set player picks, and we're also going to be unveiling, Chris, our predictions, which I know you're excited about because, of course, last time we had our Grand Slam preview, it was Wimbledon. There was a lot of chat aimed towards you about Coco Gauff.
Yes.
And you feel like you were almost like ahead of the curve there, I think, given the summer she's just had.
I saw some changes, and I think she just had the worst draw at Wimbledon. So I did the apology tour last time, but I think now I'm taking it back. And those of our listeners who like to sometimes politely and slightly in a less than polite manner remind me of my choice during the tournament. This time, I think it's safe to say that anyone who predicts Coco Gauff would just be following in my footsteps.
You've trailblazed the Gauff prediction, Chris.
Unless she does badly, then I have to take it back.
Well, I mean, yeah, she's definitely one of the form players of the tournament. And we just had the 2 draws announced. What's quite weird, though, about these US Open draws is that they are not live streamed. It's almost like going back to the dark ages and kind of clicking refresh on a screen and then bang, both the draws have appeared, which is feels all very kind of smoke and daggers and not really that transparent, does it really?
Did anyone witness the draw happen? Because I always remember, like, the Guinness Book of Records, someone has to turn up to officiate. I'd like someone to a picture, something, a video afterwards. They just appear on Twitter.
I'm convinced Novak Djokovic someone from his team must have been in on that draw sheet, given what has come out.
It's just nice to see him on a draw sheet in the US Open.
Well, that is the case. I thought they would put a bit more pomp and ceremony behind it because I think, they love a bit of a spectacle.
Some graphics.
But hey-ho. The main thing is we do have a draw and we will be delving into it. Let's start with the men's draw. We'll get on to Djokovic in a bit. He's the number 2 seed, so is right at the bottom. But at the top, we do have Carlos Alcaraz as the top seed. He has a very interesting quarter because he may have Yannick Sinner, which would be a potential rematch. Sinner Alcaraz. It's the new rivalry that Wimbledon so avidly. Do you think that's what we're going to get? Like looking at this section of the draw, are we on for an Alcaraz Sinner quarter?
Ooh, I think Carlos Alcaraz has been dealt quite a tough hand here in the draw that he has got. I mean, yes, you could have Yannick Sinner. You could have Daniel Medvedev also in his his semi-final potentially. I don't think maybe there are as many tricky opponents for him earlier on, but certainly getting into week 2 and beyond, I think he's got quite a tricky path on him if he wants to defend his US Open crown.
And Chris, do you think that there's any potential difficulty with, I don't know, he's got Dan Evans, for example, 3rd round potential. Evans, obviously, Washington, D.C. champion. Do you think there's any possibility that Alcaraz could have any like early slip-ups? You know, he's got Kurt for 1st round, maybe Botic, Van der Zandschulp 2nd round, Dan Evans 3rd round. Is there any shocks that could, arise looking at that draw?
Well, I mean, as you pointed out, it's going to have to be someone from the Netherlands or from Great Britain who's going to do it. Norrie's obviously in there, and I think that probably somebody who does have like quite a good head-to-head against Alcaraz has had a win against him this season is Norrie. I think someone like Evans who has a lot of variety in his play, and probably the fact that Evans had not a great run after that title might mean we could get a repeat. You know, the better he does the week before, normally the worse he does in the slam. But based on what we saw in that final that you talked about on the last podcast, I mean, it was tennis on another planet. So when we talk about tough draws, I think as far as draws go, this is not looking particularly tough if you're a Carlos Alcaraz. If you were, a Zverev struggling for form in this part of the draw, I think it could be pretty tricky. Like Vukic here is obviously someone who's had some good form, isn't seeded. And I think it's more about who's going to make up the numbers when it comes to round 3 and 4, rather than who's going to get out of this section.
There's a notable presence of British players in this section. We've got Evans and Norrie, and also Andy Murray in this section, unseeded. He opens against Corentin Moutet. Joel, you're a big Andy Murray fan. Any concerns with that draw for Andy?
I mean, obviously he pulled out of Cincinnati, and there's going to be some injury concerns there. I think he has been training this week, and I'm not under the impression he's going to withdraw from the tournament, but it's always not great, I think, when, as I said, there's a little bit of doubt in the build-up. I mean, Moutet is he can be handy on his day. I think he reached the 4th round of the US Open last year. He's not had a great run of form since Wimbledon, so that is a little bit of a boost, I think, for Murray. But I'm sort of a little bit. It's a little bit, I think, disappointing because he obviously had those grand ambitions of getting seeded in time for New York. Those haven't materialised, and I think he's been a little bit lucky in terms of where he's landed in the draw. I think this is quite a nice spot, but I'd say given those injury, I think, doubts that are lingering at the moment, in terms of like an abdominal strain. Yeah, I'm a little bit more glass half empty rather than glass half full.
But do the seedings matter, Joel? Everyone's always fixated on whether someone will get a seeding, and then turns out Murray's actually got... And I always think Murray gets a bit lucky with draws. I think Tsitsipas was quite a good draw at Wimbledon. Unfortunately, that didn't quite materialise. If you're going to have one of the top players, I mean...
I don't know.
Being between Dimitrov and Zverev, 2 players he doesn't have a bad record against, that's not a bad draw when you could have Djokovic or Alcaraz in round 1.
That is not a bad draw if you're an unseeded player. But as I say, you're left up to the draw gods, when these are made. So it very easily could have been like, I don't know, it could have been Alcaraz round 1 or Novak Djokovic round 1. So I think if you give yourself a seeding, it's more of a sure thing as opposed to being unseeded.
It's all about the wild card on the women.
Yeah, well, exactly. I think Andy's draw is better here than actually at Wimbledon. But we'll see. I think Andy Dimitrov 2nd round would be quite tasty. But just going back to Alcaraz, he's got Sinner quarterfinal, protected matchup. He would then have Medvedev in the semi-final if the seedings go to plan, because Medvedev is in this half of the draw as well in the sort of second quarter. Quite a lot of top Russians here. We've got Medvedev, Rublev, also Khachanov. They're sort of headlining this section. I mean, when I was trying to go through and make my predictions, it was hard to see against, Medvedev as a former champion, and also like maybe Rublev making the quarter because he's so sort of consistent at getting to that stage. But there are also some unseeded individuals who, would normally or previously have been seeded as well. So, Chris, is there anyone in particular that you think could pose a challenge to one of those top Russians in this draw?
Well, not to give too much away, but there's a certain Frenchman who's had a bit of a career resurgence in the last sort of 3 months, probably, in Gael Monfils.
Arthur Rinderknech.
Arthur Rinderknech, yes, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Benjamin
Adrian
Bonzi?
Mannarino?
Yes, well, Mannarino has. That's
you could make that claim, to be fair.
Mannarino is the 22nd seed. I was shocked.
Yeah, well, I mean, that is pretty impressive. I mean, the fact that Ugo Humbert is seeded when he doesn't really win unless it's on the challenger circuit, I think is also quite questionable. Exactly. No, so I think there are a few people in there. Obviously, we have John Isner playing his last tournament. I mean, that will be when you are playing your last tournament, you can do some really amazing things. You can really be inspired, and never count him out when you've got a serve like that. I think also in the mix, I think we've got to give a special mention to Max Purcell, who I saw is the only player ranked in the top 50 for singles and doubles at the moment. So he's had a great run of form. He will be high on confidence. He doesn't have to qualify here. He's in the quarterfinals this week of Winston-Salem. So looking forward to that. If he gets a matchup with Medvedev, that could be pretty tricky.
Yeah. I think that would be very tasty, a very early challenge, I think, for Medvedev in his US Open campaign. I mean, Andrei Rublev has also Emil Risovori in the first round, and I know we took a look at Rublev as this sort of pinnacle of consistency up to quarterfinals at a Grand Slam, but on the tour at the moment, he's had a few odd results, I feel, and I think Risovori first up is also could be quite a challenge for him.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the other question I have in this section is, poor Jack Draper. He had to retire. Will he be playing? He had such a good run last year, and
I don't think it's a good idea, him being in the main draw, best of 5. He's just dropped out of retired, I think, against Griekspoor in Winston-Salem. I'm almost kind of like, take yourself out of the draw. I mean, there's obviously still time for him to withdraw, but I just don't think he should be putting his body through best of 5 set tennis if it can't come through best of 3 set tennis in Winston-Salem.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then one question I also had was, we need to give a special mention to Alexander de Minaur. Kim, I think that's a player who's been showing some pretty good form. Could he upset some of the Russians in this section, do we think? Good record against Medvedev.
Yeah, my bugbear with Alex de Minaur, I mean, it's not really a bugbear. It doesn't personally grate on me. It doesn't keep me up at night.
It does, though.
I just feel whenever he gets up against, a top player, someone of a Grand Slam winning caliber, Medvedev is of that, he just sort of will succumb sort of
like
4-4 and 3. He needs to go that extra notch, and I'm not sure he's there yet. But he is the 13th seed. He's got a actually decent draw, I would say, in the early rounds. And I mean, I think it's an interesting section. Hubert Hurkacz as well. I'd love to see Hubert go on a deep run at a Slam.
Should have beaten really Djokovic at Wimbledon.
Like the most ridiculous serving performance I can remember, I think,
and
in
he's
like
still
a
lost.
Grand Slam of recent times, and he's still lost. I know.
No, it's
I just wanted to ask you, Chris. You mentioned John Isner. This is going to be his last ever tournament. He put out on social media that he's effectively retiring after this tournament, after this Grand Slam. What were your thoughts when he announced that? Were you sad? Were you kind of relieved because we don't have to sit through all those servathons again? What was your kind of overall feeling when you heard that news drop?
I think it made a lot of sense. I did think he probably would be retiring, so I wasn't particularly shocked by it. I think he's been someone who's been such a constant presence on the tour. I think he's well liked. I think he plays in the great spirit of the game. And I think when he does do well, people are genuinely happy in a way that a lot of people who could class as a serve bot, people aren't always thrilled at those results. So he's given a lot on the tennis court, and especially that epic match at Wimbledon, that longest match ever. So I think he will be remembered for lots of things. I mean, he picked up some Masters titles, former world number 8. And then even in 2022, the historic Sunshine Doubles Masters doubles. So that is something that I think is kind of a nice thing there that he's contributed on the singles and doubles court. But well-liked player who I think is going to go out in style, and I think he's deserves a really good send-off.
And let's look at the second half of the draw, because we've got Casper Ruud and Holger Rune as our sort of top two seeds. A very Scandinavian quarter, also very American quarter, because we've got a lot of the home favourites: Tommy Paul, Francis Tiafoe, JJ Wolf, Ben Shelton, also floating around in this section. Seb Corder as well, and
Marcos
also
Giron.
Yeah, Marcos Giron. Also Manarino, as we mentioned earlier, he is there at number 22 in the seedings. Rune has got Carballes Baena. Chris, you are Danish-based, big fan of Holger Rune. Been struggling a bit of injury of late. Do you think Rune could go on a bit of a run here? Like, looking at his draw, do you think he's got an all right draw where he could sort of build his way into the tournament, taking it a bit more gently to begin with?
Yeah, I think opening round, you've got to be physically fit to get past a Spaniard. I think they always try and play lots of long rallies. I think that's pretty fair to say. So it will be an initial test. If you are a bit injured, you are going to try and keep the points short. So I'd like to see a slightly more aggressive Holger Rune here than we have seen potentially at some of the previous slams of the season, where he's kind of struggled through. It's never been him playing his best tennis. It's always kind of been these 5-set matches, which I kind of thought we'd have left behind in 2023. I thought they would have been maybe a 2022 before his breakout results. So I think for me, I'd love to see him play well if he's fit, and kind of take destiny into his own hands a bit. We see these crazy videos of him training, and I just want him to replicate some of that intensity in the results on the match court, because 2 quarterfinals this year is great, but I think we all thought maybe he'd have gone one better at one of the slams. So it's a good draw. I think Tommy Paul would be a tricky customer. If you are going to make a semi-final, this is probably the most open, I would say, of the men's draw. So
yeah,
why not?
I was just going to ask, in terms of Rune, do you feel like he's been pushing his body too hard recently, given the injury troubles that we've seen him? And his body is almost just sort of breaking down. And again, going into like best of 5-set tennis, I'm not convinced he's maybe got the physicality at the moment to go on a deep run, even if his talent suggests otherwise.
I think he does.
Do you think he's in a bit of the Jack Draper vein? Like, they're both quite young, and they're sort of still developing their bodies and working out what is a sort of optimum
It's not
amount.
as bad as Jack Draper.
No, that's sort of more extreme.
I totally get it. Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, I could see similarities there, but yeah, I think for me, this part of the season, late part of the calendar year, it is a time when bodies can have aches and pains and result in time off the tour. And I think with Rune, we've sort of been just sort of stopped a little bit the momentum, given I think like his body not working to what he wants it to.
Let's not get ahead of the game now, I'd say. I think he's obviously retired kind of once in this recent period. He did obviously make the quarterfinals of Wimbledon. I think, to be honest, it's that thing where he's in the best physical shape that he can be so much, but he is training so hard. So I guess that is the question. When he did sort of pull out of that match, the next day you see him doing practice sets and you think, goodness, like that's no days off, even for the injury. So that would just be my question about, do you sometimes need to get something to heal properly before you go back into the same level of intensity? But I don't think he's a Jack Draper quite yet.
Less is more, isn't it? And
Seb Corder.
Petra Kvitova approach to training.
Casper Ruud, he's going to be hoping to replicate his final or go better, from last year. Otherwise, he'll be losing a lot of points. He's got an all right draw, to be honest. He could face Corder in the 3rd round, could be TFO 4th round. But
I think JJ Wolf could be quite a tricky one in round 2 if that materialises.
Joel, come on.
I think that's tricky. I think JJ Wolf could spring a surprise there. Home crowd, terrible hair in part, but no, I do love a mullet actually every now and then.
Well, he's had it so long, it's back in fashion.
Tricky.
The mullet, hasn't he? It's now the peak.
Is that John Jeffrey? Is that JJ's John Jeffrey? Is that what it stands for?
That's what it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've got Ruud.
Should we call him John
Ruud
Jeffrey instead? That's quite funny. John Jeffrey Wolf.
John Jeffrey Wolf, right? I've got Ruud. I think could go out early here. I'm not going to lie.
You can't bet against him, Joel. Honestly, we've learnt this before. He had no form going to the French. He made the final. He's got no form coming into this. He's going to make the final, surely.
It's one or the other. It is one or the other.
Exactly.
What do you think about Dominic Thiem? You know, I saw him play quite well against Tsitsipas at Wimbledon. He is playing Bublik first round. He's unseeded, but he is a former champion. Do you think he can try and get a few slam wins under his belt? It's been so long since we've seen him do well at a slam. I mean, is there any hope?
He hasn't played on hard yet, has he? I don't think I've seen him play a result on hard courts. I think his last one was over in Austria in the clay season. So the sort of preparation that speaks to doesn't tell me he's going to be a potential threat here.
I mean, I don't think he'd be a threat, but I just thought, you know, he might get a few wins, or I don't know, maybe he's definitely going down the less is more route and not trying to practice at all.
He's had a couple of months off almost.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's tricky, isn't it, Joel? We're on different sides here. You want to be the optimist. I just think something's got to change upstairs in order for him to be able to get back to the top.
Yeah, and I want to be an optimist, but when I look at Alexander Bublik in round one, I still think that's on Bublik's racket. Dominic Thiem may come out with the victory, but I think that would be a case of Bublik potentially going walkabout at some point in the match.
He can go walkabout for 2 sets and still win 3-set match for Bublik.
Well, exactly. So I still think that's a very tall order for Dominic Thiem in round one, particularly given he's not really had much hardcore action of late. And yeah, Bublik is, you know, he's having a very good season. You know, that match he had against Rublev at Wimbledon, you know, just showed, I think, the level he can play
Should
to.
have won that.
I think he should have won that. I think we've seen a more mature version of him this season. Yes, he's still the entertainer, but I think, you know, with Wimbledon, I think he showed that, you know, he should harbour hopes of, you know, deep runs at Grand Slams. If he can put his mind to it, I think he can accomplish more than what his career highlights so far have suggested.
Absolutely. And I was going to say in this section, we haven't necessarily given a couple of players necessarily the airtime yet. That's not Manarino, and I'm looking for a French name, can't find one. But in terms of the American hope, so obviously Francis Tiafoe had that breakthrough tournament last year, and Tommy Paul had a hard court breakthrough at the start of this year. Out of those two, I was going to ask you, who do you think, excluding Taylor Fritz for this conversation, in this section has the most likelihood of getting out of the section?
Seb Korda.
I've gone Korda. Yeah, I think he might spring a surprise and have a bit of a run here.
No, are we joking?
Kim, I was joking. Kim, I was joking.
That was a joke.
I just think it's been a while. Okay, my joke filters are clearly off this evening. It's been a while since Korda's been talked about. Yeah, so it always Von Drusova hadn't been talked about.
Okay, yeah.
Then she won Wimbledon, so maybe I'm just.
He's got the game.
I think it's Tommy Paul. I personally think it's Tommy Paul. I think he's so under the radar, and even at his home tournament, I think he will still be under the radar. But I think this is a good quarter for him. I think the tricky thing is he could have Davidovich Fokina in round 3, and you just don't know what Davidovich Fokina can turn up. He's, again, a little bit like a Bublik who's right next to him in the draw in terms of he's got so much talent and potential, and if he puts his mind to it, again, it can take him further than, you know, I think what we see in, you know, in his career so far. So again, that could be quite a tricky round 3 matchup for Tommy Paul.
So we're saying Seb Korda and Tommy Paul for this section. Is that what I'm hearing?
I mean, no one's talking about Ben Shelton. Ben Shelton seems to be the biggest thing since sliced bread in America, I think,
right now,
over the last few months.
Sharing the court with Roger Federer and Iga on running promotion day. I mean,
but he's not had great matches on the tour. He's not really put a string of victories together to make you think, oh my God, this is, you know, when's his breakout moments are right around the corner. But again, this part of the draw feels open enough that you could, if you're him,
an American story.
Yeah, exactly.
What about Lerner Teen of America? He's in on a wild card, so who knows? Let's quickly look at the last quarter of the draw.
Do we have to, Kim?
Do we have to? Yeah, well, there's not maybe much to say about this quarter, perhaps. Novak Djokovic resides there as the second seed, and he's got a very straightforward draw, I think. Quite a few qualifiers. He's opening against Alexandre Muller of France. Looking at that draw, I don't see anyone who's going to challenge him. The nearest sort of top name would be Felix Auger-Aliassime in the fourth round. He's been in terrible, dire form.
Yeah.
And then he would have a potential quarter with
That's
either
putting it lightly.
Tsitsipas or Fritz as the quarter, neither of whom are also having the greatest of times on tour. Do you think this is an absolute certainty that Djokovic will sail through this section?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. One word answer, just yes.
Shall we move on to the women's draw? No.
It's really hard. Guys, can you either of you try and make an argument of Djokovic not coming out of this quarter?
A line judge getting hit in the throat?
Is that how we're getting? Is that like, it's either that or, withdrawal or retirement?
There are no players
maybe
That's
here
it.
that I think could do it.
Yuri Vesely is residing.
Or maybe one of the
in this
qualifiers that we
section.
don't know who haven't been placed yet. That could be it. I don't think Ethan Quinn on the wild card will be the one to do it, but maybe we see how many sets will he drop. As we talked about before, we started recording. He loves to drop a set against someone that he can beat easily. So, will it be in the first round against Muller, or will it be against Quinn or Zapata Morales? Which one do we think? Any sets dropped?
Laszlo Djere, third round on a tie break.
First set?
Yes.
Muller first set, round one.
I think second set. Okay, here we go. That's the real competition here.
This is a real niche prediction now. I mean, looking at the other people in the draw, Felix Auger-Aliassime is playing Mackenzie McDonald first round. I think McDonald might get that one, actually.
Yeah, I can see that. Christopher Eubanks. What do you guys think of Christopher Eubanks? Do you think he'll back up what he did, at Wimbledon? Fairy tale run for him. Now at his home slam. Could you see him going on a similar deep run that he did at SW19?
Ask me at the end of the podcast and I'll tell you. I maybe have him going a little bit of a distance here, but someone who I don't think is going to go a bit of a distance would be Stefanos Tsitsipas. I think that's a very tricky round one.
Milos Raonic.
It's awful.
Versus Tsitsipas.
It's possibly the worst.
Is it worse than Andy Murray? Guess Tsitsipas?
Is it the worst first round matchup for a top seed in this draw?
Oh, it could be.
I mean, Alexei Popyrin in second round after that is not even that easy either.
That's not easy either. That's true. I mean, yeah, maybe I'd say Max Purcell would be the one I wouldn't want to see first round, slightly more than Milos. But
he's
Milos
in great form.
Yeah, Milos's serve would make that always a worrying encounter.
It's got night session, 3 tie breaks, Raonic winning in 4. That's what I'm thinking.
Okay. Well,
I'd love to see it.
Who do we think is going to come through that one, Kim?
Well, I have gone for Tsitsipas in my prediction, so I think he's still going to have the edge.
Actually, I've got to backtrack that. I just remembered I've got Tsitsipas in my predictions as well.
You can't have it both ways, Joel.
I'm having it both ways.
I don't think
Sorry.
I have, so I'm gonna let loose on this section. I think this is wide open.
Well, speaking of predictions, let's make some. Let's go through our quarterfinals. So let's start with the first quarter, and I want you both to tell me who you've got as your matchup. So first quarter, Joel.
Alcaraz versus Sinner.
Chris?
I've got Alcaraz versus Sinner.
I've also got Alcaraz versus
Guys,
Sinner. Complete agreement.
This never happens.
What's the Wimbledon poster got?
Alcaraz versus Sinner.
It's the ultimate rivalry.
Yeah,
apparently.
Absolutely. Of all time.
Yep.
Right, quarter two, Joel.
Medvedev versus Hurkacz.
Ooh, Chris.
Ooh, Medvedev Monfils.
Okie doke. I've got Medvedev Khachanov. Gone for an all-Russian affair.
Okay.
Yeah.
Quarter three, Chris.
I've gone for my boy Casper Ruud. It's got to be versus Tommy Paul.
Oh, lots of love for Tommy Paul.
I've
Joel?
just been looking at that. Rude Paul?
Rude Paul,
There's
yes,
a joke.
yes.
There's a
Drag
joke there
race?
Yeah,
somewhere.
there is. I can
There's
see
a joke
that.
there somewhere.
Yeah, but who's going to win that race?
I'm going for an all-American quarterfinal. Francis Tiafoe versus Tommy Paul.
Oh. Well, I've gone for Seb Korda versus Holger Rune,
Okay,
so I've gone
Kim.
completely different.
We need to do a wellness check on you, Kim, because I'm worried about that prediction. Were you of sound mind and body when you made that prediction?
Well, you normally all predict Rune to
True.
win the title,
Okay,
so
true.
I was
I'll take
expecting
it
one
back.
of you to,
You do have
I
the
thought
best
I'd
track record with predictions.
keep the Rune side going. Quarter four, Joel.
Tsitsipas versus Djokovic, but I'm already regretting saying that because I actually think Raonic's going to win in round one.
And Chris.
Well, hopefully, Joel Collectus, that you can make up for that. I'm going to go Eubanks Djokovic.
Eubanks getting to the quarters. Amazing. Okay. I'm going Tsitsipas Djokovic as well. So I'm going kind of fairly standard. So, Joel, do you want to just tell us who you've got in your semis, final, and champion?
So my semis: Alcaraz, Medvedev, Tiafoe, Djokovic. I'm going with the final. The final everyone wants, I feel, Alcaraz-Djokovic, but I think it's going to be a reversal from the Wimbledon men's final, and I've got Novak Djokovic as your champion.
Ooh, okay. Well, I've gone very similar, actually. I've gone Alcaraz, Medvedev, but Rune Djokovic. And I've got an Alcaraz-Djokovic final with also Djokovic winning. I think he's going to get the better of Carlos this time. But Chris, have you got anything different?
Ooh, so Kim's gone with the seeds, exactly. 1 to 4 seed.
Have I really?
Yeah, I think you have.
God, I did that without even realising.
I think you have. I think
Predictable.
Holger is the number 4.
So
yeah,
predictable.
she does sometimes do this, and that's maybe why she has success. But I have gone for Alcaraz Medvedev as well, so I can't really speak. And then I've gone for the number 5 seed. I've gone for Casper making the semis, taking on Djokovic. And then I've gone for Alcaraz Djokovic. But I think that loss will really inspire him from Cincinnati. I think it was so close that over 5 sets, the boy does not give up. Alcaraz is going to take it. I believe
I'm
it.
looking forward to seeing if that does materialise.
We can't all say Djokovic, can
Okay.
we?
We're all saying Alcaraz Djokovic in the final. If one final question to you both, what's the one thing stopping us getting that final?
That's a really difficult question. Injury, freak accident, falling over, slipping on the court.
The end
Do you
of the
think it's
world as
that
we
nailed
know
on?
it. The end of
Do
the
you
world
think
as we
it's
know
that
it.
nailed on?
Yeah.
I think physical injury would be, or if we see intense heat, really awful cramping and physical conditions, then it's sort of battle of the fittest to come through. But I do think it's a very high percentage chance we'll get this final. On that note, we're taking a quick break now, but do join us in the second half where we'll be doing exactly the same and looking at the women's draw, making our predictions there, and also revealing our collect set player picks for this year's US Open. So do not go anywhere.
Our US Open coverage is sponsored by AG1. AG1 is the daily foundational nutrition supplement that supports whole body health.
If a comprehensive solution is what you need for your supplement routine, then try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase.
Go to drinkag1.com/tennis weekly. That's drinkag1.com/tennis weekly. Check it out.
Welcome back to the Tennis Weekly podcast, sponsored by AG1. And now we're going to move on to looking at the US Open women's draw for 2023, with Iga Swiatek headlining the women's draw at the top. She is the number 1 seed. She's the defending champion, world number 1. She hasn't won either of the warm-up events. She's got to the semis in both, so still in decent form. Looking at her draw, do you think that she is on a good trajectory to defend her title, or do you think she might be stopped by someone by the name of Coco Gauff, perhaps, who also is in her quarter? Joel, you're nodding along. Is that an agreement? Or
again, I think she's got a few looseners in the early rounds, but you never know. I think she could face Yelena Ostapenko or Kudermetova in round 4. If that is someone like an Ostapenko, you just don't know what tennis you're going to see from her on that day, and I think she could cause Iga Swiatek some problems. But I think fans again want to see a Swiatek-Gauff quarter-final. It's almost a bit of a shame that I think they are in the same quarter, but the fact that Gauff got that win over Swiatek in Cincinnati over the world number 1, it adds a level of intrigue and spice that I don't necessarily think was there before, because it was also one-sided to Iga Swiatek. And I think the story for me in this quarter is, what are we going to see from Coco Gauff? Because I think we know what we're going to see from Iga Swiatek, but the way that Gauff and her summer has panned out so far, who's to say that she couldn't upset the apple cart and go on to defeat the world number 1 again?
Yeah, can she do it at Grand Slam, I think, is the big question if they meet in that section. Coco Gauff has some, she's got a qualifier first round. We're not sure who that is yet. She could play Mira Andreeva in the second round, which
Danielle
would be a real
Collins,
battle
third round.
The youngsters. Yeah, Danielle Collins could be a third round.
I mean, Gauff and Andreeva played each other, I think, in the French Open, and Andreeva took that first set before Gauff steamrolled it in 2 and 3. So again, it's another fascinating battle. I'd love to see a second part.
Well, I just think, Joel, on this Coco Gauff comments, you talked about her summer. can you admit now that Wimbledon was just a flash in the pan and inspired Sophia Kenin? Can we just please say that? Because I could see there were I genuinely could at the time, and I think that the forehand is so improved. But as Kim says, under the biggest pressure of a Grand Slam quarterfinal, where people are genuinely expecting her to maybe beat Iga if they were to face off, will a new technique on the forehand hold up in that moment? And that is, for me, is the big question, because we've all seen she's got the game for it, but what she hasn't always had is the mentality for it. And winning matches in straight sets like she did so well across the summer, rather than getting kind of dragged out to these 3-set matches, that's one thing. But when you haven't got that slam, that would be my question. And I'm actually probably erring on the side of caution here, because with great kind of expectation comes a really big challenge for someone. I mean, she is very mature for 19, but she also really wants this. And I think that can be, at times, a bit of a barrier as well as the expectation.
Do you see there being any obstacles of Coco Gauff getting to that point? Because you mentioned there's Danielle Collins. There's also a returning Jen Brady.
Petra
Kvitova as well. Even Caroline Wozniacki. Who knows there? Do you think we still got to take it one match at a time? We can't just assume we're going to see a kind of Gauff Swiatek in the quarter.
I mean, I learnt last year, and I think we both learnt last year, that when it came down to predictions, Taylor Fritz was a real key player of the summer. He had fantastic form, and he actually said himself he thought he was going to win the title, thought he could win the title, not that he would, and then he went out in the first round. And so I think you have to see, no first round of a slam is easy, and I think Serena said that as well, that there's no easy rounds, no easy matches, and I think she has to take that approach, because you can't get ahead of yourself, because everyone can play tennis and everyone is their most inspired when they play at slam. So it could be an upset in the first round, and I wouldn't be completely shocked by it. But I think if she makes it through some of the earlier rounds, I think she could have a really deep run, yeah.
And we've got a wild card of the name Caroline Wozniacki in this section. What are your expectations for her, in her first slam back? We saw, Eveliina Svitolina have an absolutely brilliant Wimbledon after coming back. She hasn't been out, Wozniacki's been out longer than Svitolina, but do you think she can come back with a real impact? Or, what are you... Joel, you're not looking confident as I'm saying this.
I think it's going to be tough. I think it's going to be tough against the qualifier. We don't know who that qualifier is at the moment, but certainly a player who's come through 3 matches already against Caroline Wozniacki. I think that could be quite challenging. There's quite a few handy players in that still in the qualifying draw. So I think we'll have to wait and see, but I think it could be quite a challenge, and it's not going to get any easier, because she could face Petra Kvitova in round 2, and I quite like to see that happen, because that's a very old school matchup. But I think with a qualifier who's got matches already under their belt, I think it could be quite tricky.
Yeah, I think with the Wozniacki comeback, I haven't kind of aired this on the podcast yet, but I do have questions, because I really felt like her career had peaked when she won that slam, when she answered all the critics of being a Slammers #1, won the title. And the nature of her game is that it is a lot about retrieving. So in returning age 33, you have to be a bit more aggressive, because you might be the fittest 33er in the world, but it is a very physical game that she has. And so that would be my question, is that when it comes down to some of these matches, she's got to adapt her game to be a bit more aggressive in order to be able to have the impact that she did have on the tour. Because we did see players like Halep when she was playing. If you don't have enough on the ball, it's very hard to kind of get those results on a consistent basis. So I would love to see that second round match, but I do think Jennifer Brady is probably going to come through that part of the draw, because she was mighty impressive in her return so far.
Yeah, Jen Brady, obviously she was in fantastic form about 2 years ago, wasn't she?
She's been to the semi-finals here before.
Yeah, and the Australian Open final, I believe it was. So it would be great to see her, get back to that form and have the results. Let's look at the second quarter, because here we've got Elena Rybakina as the 4th seed, sort of headlining this section of the draw. She's had, quite a tiring time of late. Obviously, she had to retire in Cincinnati after her late night double kind of matches in Canada. She's got quite a tough opener, I think, against Marta Kostyuk, and then she's got, the likes of Azarenka, Belinda Bencic, Sorana Castera in her section. That's not easy. And then if she gets through all that, it would be either like Karolina Mukova potentially as her quarterfinal opponent. Chris, where are your eyes drawn when you look at this section of the draw with all those names in?
Well, I'm just looking at Sloane Stephens, if I'm honest.
Of course you are.
Yeah, I mean, you have to really. I think she's playing really well again. And the US Open, she plays fantastically. She's just got herself through against Mira Andreeva in Cleveland. She's playing some very solid tennis. And we've seen that to beat her at the US Open, it takes a very good player.
Like Haddad Meyer in round one?
I wouldn't say that that's a set in stone loss in any way. I think Sloane probably could take that in two, really.
Mm-hmm.
So I am thinking that there are some opportunities here for players such as Sloane. I think Mukova, there's a great opportunity in this section. Obviously, drawing a potential fourth round against Sakari, someone she's beaten so regularly recently. I also think that Azarenka's got a good draw here. And I think that with Rybakina, she's never been past the third round, I believe, at the US Open. Last year, there wasn't great preparation. She talked about the fact that after Wimbledon, she wasn't able to train as she wanted to and get the hardcore practice under her belt. So I would say Marta Kostic's a hard draw, and Sorona Cristea on her day, you do not want to see her in your section because she's a bit of a giant killer. So I don't think it's a foregone conclusion for Rybakina making the semi-finals here, and I think there'll be some surprise packages in this section.
And you talk about giant killers. You've also got Aya Tomljanovic in there. I think she's entered the US Open on a protected ranking. She's been off the tour for a while, I think, due to injury. But yeah, last time she was here, she defeated Serena Williams and sent her into.
Well, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. So again, it's not an easy draw, isn't it, for Rybakina? Despite having like so much hopes for her, I just hope she's just like injury free and she's able to be at 100%, because I do think the back-to-back nature of the Masters we've just had in Canada and Cincinnati, if there is one player it's probably taken its toll on the most, it feels like it's Elena Rybakina.
Yeah, definitely. It's been super tough. And one thing I did want to say I thought was particularly nice about the wildcards this year is that one wildcard went to Fiona Ferrer, who's obviously had a very tough time of late, to make kind of an understatement there. So I think it's great that she's working her way back onto the tour. She was a player with phenomenal talent. So I think that Azarenka Ferrer match could be particularly interesting. And I think it would be good to see what she can do on a big stage again.
And Kim, is Sorosribes Tormo Annalena Canalina, is that going 3 sets for 3 hours in searing heat?
I hope so. I'll be disappointed if it doesn't. Let's look at the last part of the draw, well, the second half. And we've got JPEG in this section. So fresh off the back of a Masters 1000 title. She is the top seed in this section, and she's got a tough opener, I think. Georgie round one. Camilla Georgie on her day, you know, she's also a former Masters 1000 champion. That could that be an upset? Or do you think JPEG's, you know, gonna rein it in, or do you think she'll be feeling kind of any more pressure than normal?
I can see how people think that could be an upset, but I get the feeling with Jessica Pegula, her identity at Grand Slams has never been like shock exit round one, like regardless of the opponents like she has faced. So although I can kind of understand where that's coming from, I still feel like Jessica Pegula will come through that, given the form she showed, you know, winning in Canada as well. I do genuinely think like every Grand Slam for her, it's like I've got a point to prove here, and it's that point that I can mix it with the very best. And I think this US Open is no different, and there's just going to be big focus, I think, on that doubles team of Coco Gauff and Jessie Pegula. And I think she's got a good chance here, and I don't think Georgie might pose her a few problems, but I certainly feel like Pegula will come through that.
I feel like further on in her section of the draw, she could have Svitolina third round, Madison Keys or Ludmila Samsonova also lurking. I mean, Samsonova also in great form of late. So, it's not the easiest of draws, but I think, like, I know what you're saying, she is fairly consistent at slams, and her trouble has always been getting that extra notch to kind of defeat the top players at the big stages. We've also got Caroline Garcia in this section, but she's been out of form.
I don't think we're going to have Caroline Garcia for very long, Kim, I'm sorry to say.
Can we just do a quick check-in? Where are we at with the Renaissance? This wasn't part of the prophecy. She was supposed to just keep going up.
She is doing all right in Cleveland, but
it's a 250, and apparently
she's already played.
I'm trying
to give cause for optimism here for Kim, but
Have we gone back to the Middle Ages? Maybe.
Yeah, we need to. Yeah. We need another.
We need a new Renaissance.
I'm really hoping though we do get. We could get a rematch of what went down in Birmingham, which we were there for in Billie Jean King. Sorry, I say Birmingham, Coventry,
I did fly
in the
into
Midlands.
Birmingham. Maybe your confusion is there.
But we could get Katie Boulter, Caroline Garcia in a repeat of that in round 2, which I would love to go. I would love to see them lock horns again. I thought that was such a fantastic match we watched in Coventry. So I'd like to see that happen. And I have no doubt we could see that happen. But yeah, I feel like Garcia's not been on the greatest run of form lately.
I also feel like we're not talking about the Wimbledon champion.
I was going to say, what about the Wimbledon champion? That's what I was going to interrupt with.
Kim, that's what happens. We saw it with Elena Rybakina. We're seeing it. We're going to see it with Marketa Vondrousova. We're going to see her be put out on court 11, day 1, 11 a.m.
I mean, scheduling-wise, they probably would put Andreescu in a better spot and Lena Fernandez versus Alexandrova. I think she might struggle for scheduling.
Well, it is a good point, actually, because, we have genuinely been here with Rybakina as Wimbledon champion. Are we going to be repeating those same mistakes? Because Rybakina was very vocal about the fact that she didn't feel like she was being treated like a Grand Slam champion. And arguably, Marketa Vondrousova is in a similar position in terms of there's not really going to be probably that many people in the crowds coming down for the day for the tennis and being like, and realizing, oh my God, there's the Wimbledon Grand Slam champion is here. So but actually interesting to see how they do treat her.
She's in the car
from the
park.
Tournament organizer point of view.
If we have a few car park matches for previous sort of slam week.
She get top billing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think she's going to get a night session off the bat. That's for sure against a qualifier. But in terms of like her preparation for this, I think she has had a better preparation and shown some better form. It hasn't been a complete drop-off, whereas I think for Rybakina, it really was a struggle to get the time on court because that was a bit more of a surprise victory in some senses, whereas I think Marketa has been very grounded. She's been back on the tour, plugging away again. So I think she's got a pretty good draw, and I think if she were to see the draw and see that she got Caroline Garcia, I think she'd think, you know what, I've got some good chances here. So I'm not sure that it would be particularly wise to bet against her. And I think hopefully we break that run, where we get a Wimbledon champion who doesn't show up at the US Open.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see her do well. We've also, you mentioned Andreescu in this section of the draw, also former champion. She could face Leila Fernandez second round, former finalist. So perhaps a tasty early round.
Svitolina, we haven't mentioned, I've just seen.
Svitolina, yeah, she's got a decent looking draw until she meets
semi-final. Is this win? No, final. She'll win Australia. That was how it works.
Yeah, I mean, she's had good memories at the US Open in the past.
Semi-final before, yep.
Yeah, exactly. So she's so great form in Wimbledon, and I'd love to see could potentially face Pegula in round 3. I think that would be a great. It
was a great match when they played. Was it Washington? They played. That was a great match.
Yeah. So, I'd love to see that.
Let's look at the last quarter. Here we've got Arina Sabalenka as a second seed and also Ons Jabeur as the 5th seed. I feel like these two are the sort of standout players in this section.
Kim, if we were saying the draw was sort of red carpet worthy for Novak Djokovic to the final, I think there's arguments to say the red carpet treatment is also out for Arina Sabalenka.
Yeah, I would somewhat agree. I don't think there's anyone that's particularly going to challenge. I mean, she could play Jodie Burrage in the second round if Jodie gets through. She could potentially face a Kazatkina, or we've got Sophia Kenin in her sort of section.
Venus
that would be
Williams.
maybe like the 4th round. Venus Williams has got a wild card. She's playing Paula Badosa first round. That's an interesting.
Is Paula Badosa still technically a tennis player? Is my question, or is she?
Or is she Instagram?
Instagram other half.
Hey, Badosa can be both.
Well, apparently, you can be both in that way, but you can't be both a singles player and a doubles player for Joel.
We also have Kaya Kanepi against Barbora Strycova.
I thought
which
she
is a bit
retired.
Of a blast in the past.
Retired. She retired 3 times now.
She came back from retirement.
Yeah,
Maybe she
I
came
thought
back.
Wimbledon was her last one.
And then she came back again.
Since
Why
Wimbledon.
did she just make up her mind?
Goodness. Maybe this is the last one.
Well, we'll see. And I mean, I am curious to see what Sophia Kenin does, given that she got to the 3rd round of Wimbledon, and she's actually got a decent draw, I would say.
I mean, just on the topic of Ons Jabeur, she suffered that heartbreak at Wimbledon. Do you think that's going to like motivate her? Is she going to be like woman on the mission here? Because she does have Sabalenka in her quarter, and they faced off against each other in Wimbledon when Jabeur won to get to the final. Sabalenka defeated Jabeur, I think, in Cincinnati. Do you think they're going to have a trilogy match off in their quarter? Do you think?
I really don't. I'm afraid. I think.
Oh, okay.
The more I reflect on the way that kind of Ons Jabeur sort of reacted towards being in that final and after the final, I just think it was so strange, the idea that this was like her destiny and that everybody kind of thought that it was hers and wanted her to win it in that way. And I think she needs to kind of reframe what she's doing here, because nothing will ever be handed to you. And I'm sure she understood that in her career, that she had to work so hard to get there. And I think that Wimbledon final was a very weird one, that, it's almost like if you get nominated for an Oscar once, you'll win it the second time. And it doesn't work like that, because it is about playing the best tennis on the day. So I do think there's some scar tissue there. I think there was some scar tissue from the final the previous year, and then also making the final at the US Open afterwards. So her and Casper have been in kind of the same boat in many ways, of kind of always the runner-up. But I don't think she's going to make a deep run here, because I think it's just...
Who's going to take her out?
I can see her going out in the first round. I can see the third round exit to someone like Buzkova or Martic. Maria's playing well. I just think it's going to be a bit of an odd result here. But I'm not trying to be a hater. I just think that there's a lot of things going on for her, in terms of, she talked about the fact that she was going to take it a year out after last year's final to maybe have a baby. And then every single slam, the pressure's ramping up for her to get a result before she takes a career break. And I think that's really hard to deal with.
Well, on that note, we've explored the women's draw at somewhat some sort of depth, and I mean it's always, I would say, less predictable than the men's draw, but we have to come up with some predictions. We'll do our best to avoid that slam spoon of shame. I know, Chris, you are absolutely desperate not to have it again after you predicted Coco Gauff to win Wimbledon. Sorry to remind you again.
Well, I stand by it.
So let's see what we've got. Let's go quarter by quarter again. Let's go quarter one. Chris, who have you got?
Unsurprisingly, I think we might all have this. I've gone for Swiatek versus Gauff.
Yeah, I've also got that as well. Joel, are you 3 out of 3 on that?
Yeah, 3 out of 3 on that. Swiatek versus Gauff.
What about quarter two, Chris?
I've gone for Azarenka Stevens. I've gone for a repeat of, what was it, the Australian Open in, what year was that? Like,
deluded.
Yeah, I've really gone.
Absolutely deluded.
No.
That's quite old school. I'm liking that. I've gone for Rybakina against Mukova. And Joel?
I've also gone for Rybakina versus Mukova.
I'm gonna need to spice these up, lads. Please, come on.
Are they too predictable? Okay, quarter three, Chris.
Oh, actually, I've just gone with the seeding.
You have put way too much spice on this
Pagula.
one.
That's the
Garcia,
seeding.
you were just having a go at her for not continuing the renaissance, but she's in your quarterfinal.
Why not?
I'd like to see it. Joel?
I've gone Vondrousova Svitolina. I think Svitolina's going to upset JPEG and get to a quarter with Vondrousova.
I've gone for Bianca Andreescu against
Wait,
Jessica.
we didn't even
wow.
mention her.
Well, apart from the fact that she
Was in the draw.
get a better show court or something than Vondrousova. Yeah, I just feel like, former champion. She played well against Jabeur at Wimbledon before the rain delay, and I was quite impressed there, so maybe. Quarter four, Chris?
I'm just going to have to completely go back on what I just said. I just realised that I've changed my mind like Joel did for the men's. I put Jabeur here, but I don't believe that's going to happen at all. I thought she might go out earlier, but I can't put anyone else there now, so there's no one else. In the absence
There's
of another
no one
option,
else but Ons.
Jabeur Sabalenka.
Okay, Joel?
Yep, I'm going Jabeur Sabalenka as well.
Oh, I've gone for Maria Buzkova against
I believe that.
Arina Sabalenka.
Yes. Can I do that?
I'm confused.
Marie,
I feel
not
like,
Marie.
yeah, you two, I feel like you need to
I
swap
put it in
around
the wrong
what
column,
you
Kim.
predicted.
Can I take your prediction,
Yeah.
please?
No, you can't get out of it that easily. So, Chris, who have you got in your semis, final, and champion?
Once or twice a year, I put Stevens in a semi at a slam. I've done it again. And she's going to play against Iga. She's not going to get the better of her, though. And then I've gone for Pagula Sabalenka, because I do think Pegula is playing pretty solid. This could be the breakthrough. But then I think that her record against Sabalenka isn't great. So I've gone for a 1v2 and I've gone for a number 2 winning. I've gone for Sabalenka taking it. I just think she hit so big at the US Open. And if she gets to semi-finals last year without a serve, imagine what she can do this year.
That is true. And now she's already won a slam, so she'll have that sort of belief that she can do it. Joel, what about your semis finals champion?
I've gone Goff, Rybakina, Svitolina, Sabalenka, and then my final, no Iga Swiatek anywhere in sight. I've got Coco Gauff, Arena Sabalenka, and I'm doing a Chris here. Listeners might hate it, and they can hate me for it. I've got Coco Gauff as US Open Ladies Singles Champion.
Oh, well, maybe we'll be giving you the slam.
I honestly can't believe how you jumped on this bandwagon, Joel. I honestly can't. You were laughing at me for predicting she could win. And I remember Naomi Cavaday said to us when we interviewed her that she also thought that Goff might win Wimbledon. So maybe she's a great pundit, I think. So maybe you're following in two great footsteps.
I feel like you were too ahead of the curve, and now I'm hitting mainstream.
I can spot
and going along with the summer of Coco.
You can just follow what other people say.
I can just bandwagon. I'll just bandwagon it.
I was going to bring up the bandwagon idea. Well,
I love Goff. I love Goff though. So if she does win, listeners, I will be happy.
Yeah, exactly. I've gone for Swiatek against Rybakina, and then Andreescu, Sabalenka. But I've gone quite boring, I think, with my final. I've just gone for Swiatek, Sabalenka. Oh, same as you, Chris. I just called you boring.
I mean, that is boring.
It's the top 2 seeds, isn't it? And I've gone for Iga winning. So I've gone, quite standard in my predictions for both the men's and the women's, except for Andreescu. She's my rogue out of the lot. But how rogue is a former champion, I don't know.
At least we've gone for someone different. That's all that matters. We aren't that boring as a collective.
No, I hope not. Talking about collecting and collectives, we do have the collector set nominees or player picks, I guess, to announce. So for those of you listeners who have played before, hopefully you'll be pleased to know it's back. And we will be giving you 3 male players and 3 female players. And we need you to pick which round you think they are going to reach in the US Open draw. So if you've never played this before, you just have to, once we've given you the names, just maybe have a look at the draws, or maybe don't, and just tell us which round you think which round you think they're going to reach. And if you think they're going to be, if getting to the final, you need to tell us if they're going to be a champion or the runner-up. So the prize is very exciting. It's an exclusive Tennis Weekly mug. So perfect for sitting on the sofa watching tennis, having a nice brew. But I think we're ready to announce who the player picks are. So Joel, would you like to do the honours for our 3 male player picks?
Right. Drum roll, please. Yes. The male picks for collector set at the US Open this year are Carlos Alcaraz, Stefanos Tsitsipas, and Tommy Paul.
And Chris, would you like to reveal our 3 female player picks?
Well, we've got Marketa Vondrousova, Karolina Muchova, and Caroline Wozniacki.
So there we have it. We've got Carlos Alcaraz, Stefanos Tsitsipas, Tommy Paul, Marketa Vondrousova, Karolina Muchova, and Caroline Wozniacki. So the deadline for getting your predictions in is the start of play at the US Open on Monday. So that's kind of Monday, usually midday UK time. You can tweet your predictions to us. You can message us on Facebook. You can email us. You can message us on Instagram. You can submit it through the website. However you want to get in contact, we're on all those channels. So please get in touch. We will be revealing our picks in our first round catch up next week.
Yes, it's going to be a very exciting affair. The final major of the season is here, and as always, Tennis Weekly will be doing round by round coverage over the next 2 weeks. But for now, listeners, I hope you've enjoyed our latest episode of the Tennis Weekly podcast, and remember to subscribe to us to stay up to date on all the action to come from Flushing Meadows at the US Open.
We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all major podcasting platforms out there. And if you like what you're hearing, then make sure to leave us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
You can also follow us on social media or email the show. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube at Tennis Weekly Pod. You can also purchase Tennis Weekly merch at etsy.com/shop/Tennis Weekly Podcast. So do check out our new exclusive merchandise on there. You can also email the show, tennisweeklypod@gmail.com, or check out our website, tennisweekly.co.uk.
And we will be back on Tuesday at Tennis Weekly HQ for our round 1 US Open catch-up sponsored by AG1. So I hope you can join us for that. But in the meantime, it's goodbye from Kim.
Goodbye.
It's goodbye from Chris.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me. We'll see you again soon.